All right. I'm going to start our time together.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi, Rachel.
All right. I am recording this. I'm going to put this on our Facebook page, Leading the Way. Hopefully, you guys have all had a chance to take a look at that page and the post that's pinned at the top. And we're going to get started here. We'll let a couple more people in. But one of the things that, as we get started, the reason why I wanted to make this really clear about what this group is because I didn't want it to be like, hey, I'm looking to grow my business, or I'm at this certain rank and I want to I want to be a part of this group. I really wanted this to be an opportunity for all of us to really grow and learn from each other. And as you've read the preface and the two stories or the two lives, and getting into just the beginning portion of this book before we get into the first commitment, I think one of the things that you realize is that that's what the purpose of this book is about learning how to become a conscious leader of your life. And like most things in our life, this is something, and as you're working through your life book and your habits health book on your own journey or with your clients, you realize that this is something that you never arrive to, but they're definitely skills to master, and that mastering takes a lifetime. And so we're going to go at this not so perfectly. And so the purpose of the group is really just to learn from each other, to share in what we're learning. So if you can, we'd love your cameras on, and we would love the opportunity to take yourself off of mute if you have something to share, because this isn't really about me. I'm not going to read to you. I'm just going to surmise some things that I've learned and ask for some thoughts and questions so I can learn also. And I'm just going to share as authentically as I can about who I am, what is going on with me as I'm reading it. And I hope that my hope is that it's not me leading the group, it's all of us leading the group. I'm just going to facilitate it through my Zoom, and that some of you will want to take over the leading of the book reading on a week. And you'll see that it is not so hard to really do what we're doing here. So let's get started. So 15 commitments to conscious leadership. I wanted to point out a couple things, and please chime in if you'd like to add something. I think one of the first things that I noticed as I was reading through the acknowledgement, and I think it's really cool, and it aligns with kind of how I started this, was meaning today's meeting is really, it says at the end of the acknowledgement, it says, "You have been allies, friends, and learning partners, and most of all, great adventurers willing to risk everything for your full aliveness." And I love that because I think, as I learned, and I've read this before, as I learn and practice to be a conscious leader of my life, I realize how much more alive I feel, the more conscious I am about who I am and how people are experiencing me. And so it's exciting to do this work with you. And so I think in the preface, it kind of starts out with really the why, like why be on this journey? And the authors give three main reasons: personal life, organizational level, or it's actually personal level, organizational level, and planetary level. So as we get into the why, I'd like for you to kind of insert your own, as you're thinking about this, what is it about the personal level, organizational level, which we all are business owners, so this is our business organizational level, our health coaching business level, and then the planetary level. And so kind of insert your own whys in there as you're getting on this journey, because I think it's important to always have a clear vision of what you want to create, right? And also the dissatisfaction that you currently have in these three areas, because that enables us to move. that enables us to see clearly where we're going. And when we start to, you're going to see this here. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. I got it from this book. When you start to put up your own resistance to making change in these three areas, it's easy once you can always weigh the vision versus where you're currently at, that dissatisfaction of those three areas. And that enables you to move past where you currently are stuck in these three areas today, or you're looking to progress in those areas. So that first one, personal level, I think one of the things that kind of stood out to me in the personal level is that many of these incredibly gifted and passionate and purposeful leaders are fraying at the edges. And so, as that personal level, you think about people that talk about being extremely successful in business, but they're fraying at the edges, right? These top CEOs of companies, right? And you can see this throughout all of organizations, whether it doesn't matter what it is, the fire service or in healthcare, it really doesn't matter, corporate America. The one thing that they're good at is building a business, but their personal life is just fraying at the edges. I think that's a great analogy or wording to use. Broken marriages, fractured families, hardened hearts, and dreamless futures. They're beating earnings and they have more money, but they're struggling to find purpose, satisfaction, happiness, and balance. And so I've seen myself in those areas in my life, and I see how important it is to really set some really good goals around what I want to create in my personal life. How many of you or anyone want to come off mute and kind of share what their thoughts in any of these three areas or in the personal level that you, as you were reading, that you may have identified with?
I think the personal level part was really the example of the two people. It really showed the difference. And I feel like I'm somewhere in between there. Like and I don't want to be in between like the lady with the yoga till 10 a.m. and just like high productivity. And I mean, she's got to be so ultra focused on the organization, and just the fact that she has all these different dream boards and all the different things that really show that she's consciously aware of everything in her life and dealing with it in a way that's healthy. And then the other guy falls into this category of the brokenness, where he's just running around like crazy. And it's interesting to see the difference between how they interact with people, the gossipiness versus the interacting in a way that's feeding relationships. So I think that reading this, it's so true. Like you read it and you're like, that's most of America. That's where most people working in corporate America work out of, that fractured place of, chasing, but they don't really ever grasp it. And it opens your eyes to the fact that you don't want to be like that. Like, why are you trying to get what you want, and what do you really want?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think the two contrasting lives that Julie is talking about, the Tim and Sharon, most of us read the Tim and it's like, oh, that obviously I would, but we can see elements of us in there, right? Feelings are never mentioned except for anger, and feelings are also a sign of weakness. Blame is always the order of the day. Anything that keeps him facing stillness and emptiness. The scorecard is fortune, fame, freedom, and opportunity, but the game itself is all that matters. And it's about being on the edge constantly, being challenged and challenging others. Caffeine, all of those things, right? We see that there is a lot of us in there. But at the same time, what was interesting for me as I read Sharon's, I was really challenged by her, and I know this is a fictitious, two different paradigms, But I think what was interesting that was challenging for me personally was I identify with a lot of the things that she is and less of Tim, but there were things even in her that I was challenged to be. Like you brought up the yoga and this, and I'm thinking, man, I'd be rather doing other things, like being busy doing things. And I think that busyness in me is where I've lost my way sometimes. And I have to remember like being present. Like this is a tough thing for our family. Like putting the phones down and just being away and like looking at each other and having one conversation or asking the other person, hey, are you in a space that you can hear my point of view right now or this conversation? Right. Because then then if you're not, then it's always, one of those things where it's like, it's a bad thing if you're not. Well, no, like what she's kind of designed in her life is a space to connect with people, and it requires other people to be on the same wavelength, or else if they're unhealthy, if they're the Tim, then that creates that tension, right? Right? If they're more of that person. So I realize the play, some of the things that she's doing in her life, and you will get into all of those commitments here in this book. They're really profound and they're tough at the same time. And so I'm looking at them as an opportunity like, okay, I want to grow in this area. And so I'm going to be more conscious. And so I think Rachel, you wanted to share something, honey?
Oh, I was just saying, like, something that stood out to me is when we invite people into coaching, we're truly, well, we invite them into program and we start conscious living. Okay. We start like, that's the smelling salt. They start talking about how they eat, how they drink, how they move. We're bringing them from a very unconscious way of living their life into the beginnings of consciousness, where it's like, what do you put in your mouth at what time? What does your nighttime routine look like? Right. So it's like this amazing opportunity to awaken them. And I love that this really showed me like why it's important to develop a skill set of awakening, because we are trying to create conscious leaders. They need to be the leader of their life, like Dr. A says, right? So as I was reading this, I'm thinking that's just it, that like we get them started on that path. And because our society is so committed to identities that don't serve us, they will fight us through the process of like, this is my identity, this is what I've always done. And I was saying to Tim this morning, I said, what this showed me, this just even the preface was like, that we get so committed to things that do not serve us. Like, and it's ironic, right? Because it's like, it's not even bearing fruit, but we're like, this is who I am. This is what I've always done. And when you read this and you see it put in such extreme, where you're like, oh, poor Tim, but Tim represents, like you're saying, all of us and all of our clients and all of the coaches that you'll have in your organization are going to be probably have been brought up in a culture where it was like the Tim, right? And now they're coming in to the culture of Sharon somewhat. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but I think that it shows us like sometimes changing your culture and changing your identity is scary, right? Where it's like, okay, well, I don't know how to be a Sharon, So I love that we have this time together, because it really made me more compassionate towards my clients, and then of course towards myself and then other team members, because you realize this is where they've been brought up. In a culture that is harsh. No, we don't need to see those feelings. The only feeling we want to see is grind and grit. And if you have anything else, you're weak. Go over there in the corner and deal with that emotion. And I love that, like, we can see that that's not going to create genius. I love how it says that we're really coming into our own genius. Well, you can't be a genius if you're unconscious. You're not going to create things that are beautiful if you're sleepwalking through life, and that really stood out to me in just the preface. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I know Julie is going to share also, but I think to Rachel's point, it's why we have team coaching, right? Because so many of us are at different levels of our growth in terms of leaders or leading our own life consciously. And so it's important that people experience people that are growing too. And maybe as a coach, you're still on your journey and you're just getting started being more conscious around your health. And as you're starting to lead other people to health, it's important to expose them to other people that have been growing and practicing being conscious about a healthy mind. So, Julie, you wanted to share something?
I wanted to add to what you were saying because it just hit me just now when you were talking about I'd rather be getting something done instead of doing yoga, right? And lately, Kaylin has been really anxious if she's resting. If she's not doing something productive, she's really anxious and she gets down on herself for watching an hour of TV. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you've been going for 10 hours. You can watch an hour of TV. Don't feel bad about that. You're like unwinding. And there's this struggle in her. And I'm like, you know why she's like that?
Right.
She's been watching me. And that's hard to swallow. I think she's becoming this person that can't rest because she's watching me. And I need to change that. I need to consciously rest in front of her and not always be doing something and being busy.
Kids catch more of what you do than what you say. I tell people that all the time. And Rachel and I are guilty of it. And we're looking at our kids like, why are you doing that? Right. And it's like, well, it's because who we are, right? They're picking up on those things. So Deborah, you wanted to share?
You know, it's funny because I came from that stress-filled environment. So I was definitely a Tim. I was always doing. I was constantly in motion. You know, I was working at the end of my career. I was actually working a 40-hour week as the PIO, but it was actually like a 60 to 80-hour week because I had the phone and the pager and everything all the time. So I was in constant motion. So I shifted from being that Tim when I got into retirement into being that Sarah and being able to do service work and calming down and being able to do all of that. But then when I took on coaching, I felt like, oh my gosh, I need to flip a switch. I need to go back to being that Tim. And I hit it so hard at the beginning. And when we were doing training and stuff, I heard that word pressure cooking. I was pressure cooking. I did it. And I think what happened is my mind just said, I'm going right back to where I was before. And I did a panic thing. And then family stuff came along. And then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm off the cliff. I'm just gone. I'm down. Yeah. But, you know, I started to shift. March came and I was like, you know what? Settle it down. I started to ease back into the training and to ease back into the community and this book. And I feel like, okay, you know, this is where you can be. This is where it can settle in. So it's just, things are just kind of shifting and I'm extremely grateful for that. But I can see where you can teeter between the two so easily. That's why I said, I'm doing that chin up on that doggone bar. Am I above below and above below? That's how I felt. But I'm grateful to be sliding back into that more calm and decent mode. So that's good.
Absolutely. And to your point, and then we'll go to Yessi. That organizational level, it's so important that we stay in our own lane. We tell clients to, you know, you got to do your own push-ups, or you might hear from your coach, you got to do your own push-ups. And part of it is that always we're creating a culture, right? And I love how he phrases it, is we're either creating a culture of secret sauce or a lethal bacteria. And so even in your own coaching journey, right, Deborah, and for all of us, if we are trying to pressure cook something, that we potentially could be creating a lethal bacteria for our business. And so the most important thing is that conscious leaders build success in a real and concrete way. And that really says it all for me. It's something that's real. It's not forced or contrived or microwaved or pressure cooked. It allows people in their own space and time to get there, not so perfectly. And so I love that. So Yessi, go ahead.
Yes, I love what you just said, Tim, and I'm enjoying the book so far. It made me more aware of what I was doing, and I'm just kind of tackling back what Julie said. I struggle with that today, I have an hour in my day and I'm like, what can I do? I'm going to do all this. I'm going to do it mindlessly and just hurry up because I have so much things to do. And Chris is gone, like living that fire life. Like, I just want to impact everything in an hour. And I think what has really taught me during this program, and maybe you guys too, you and Rachel, living in structure. So now I have like a schedule sheet for my day, literally from 6 a.m. to like when I go to bed. And I got this from Amazon and whatnot. It even has a little category for meals, and it happens to have 6 little slots. And I was like, oh, how funny. They already tell you, you know, but living in structure really helped me not be so chaotic and be like, I need to do this and do that, and like kind of do it mindfully. And now I have like, okay, let me check this off. Let me check this off. So it's been helping me a lot, and realizing that I am trying to get away from doing stuff mindfully and like really understand what I'm doing through my day and in my hour and my minute. So I struggle with that as well, Julie. And I hope like I'm not showing my kiddos that that's what we need to do, because it's not. We need to like take our time doing something.
Yeah.
So that's all. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And, you know, just so you know, this is something that Rachel and I have talked about so many times, but thank God that kids' memories, they don't last, meaning like they don't work like ours, right? Where we're like, oh, I remember the last time you did this. And right. So what's interesting about it is, you know, don't be an all or nothing thinker in this. Meaning, like if you have screwed up, you know, like me for the first 50 years of your life, I'll be 50 in a few years. I can't change yesterday, but I can affect tomorrow. And so this planetary level, this next piece in here is really that was, you know, as I read it, I'm like, hey, where is he going with this? And really, it was about legacy. Like, you know, to your point, Yessie and Chris, like, what legacy are you going to leave from this day going forward with the knowledge that you have today? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it in your business? What kind of legacy are you going to leave in your organization? Is it going to be the secret sauce, or is it going to be a lethal sauce? So being conscious about where you are in this journey and knowing that it's okay if you haven't been those things before, you're more conscious now and you're willing to move forward, right? And so I think, you know, the 2 lives that they kind of highlighted here, this could be us in a day, right? But obviously the goal is that we're less of those things that I love how they talk about it as in the planetary level, less of the win or lose competition, less of the creating a zero-sum game, less of generating losers and winners, haves and have-nots, right? So it's that scarcity, right? So it's less of that because we see that that scarcity mindset doesn't serve our goal. And that's what Sharon's kind of story illustrated to me. I think, you know, as we move.
Can I add something there? I was just gonna say, what I love is like in the culture that you can help create, and I'll just use Chris and Yessie as an example, or there's lots of you that do this. Julie Russell, right? We're stepping into a culture where we're not just like, oh, I'm just trying to build my business over here, and I'm just worried about my little team and my little leg and all of that. It's like that beautiful thing that you guys put up in Organic last night. Like, here's the rocks in our schedule. Maybe this will help somebody. Or here's Nourished Fit. Like, I know my clients are asking to move, but I don't want them to break fat burn. Maybe this will help somebody. I love that the new way of leading is collaborative. But the old way was like, I have a secret and I need to keep this for me because my job security depends on it and I don't want to collaborate. And I love that we invite people into a space of like, no, it's the genius of the team. It's the team IQ. It's the collaboration that eases our burden together, right? Like we go, oh, thank God she's doing that. Thank God Daphne made us that form, you know? So I think the health of an organization is how collaborative is it? Or is it very self-protecting and me, my, I, you know, and you'll see that that means unhealthy, but we can't judge when people do that. We just know that they probably came from an environment where when they collaborated, they were stepped on, right? So we have to give them that grace. That really stood out to me as well.
Yeah, I love that. yeah, there's so many ways to take a look at that. And I think those three areas, I think, are important. You know, as we move through this book and this experience together, I think the goal, and I'm going to just jump to the end of our, you know, at least the beginning of where we started here. The goal for me, and as I think about this group, I would ask you to consider. It says find a learning partner or several. We have several here, so you can encourage each other to live consciously as possible. From a perspective, this book is both to read and a set of practices to be implemented. So this is really about, we're practicing together. We're sharing what we're learning as we're moving, not to a good or bad place. It's just getting better, not so perfectly, right? And so I think that's a great segue for the last couple of minutes to talk about leading from above the line. And I think that'll kind of bring us to the end of our time here. And I love how he talks about leading above the line and below the line is not good or bad. It's just conscious or unconscious, right? And so that's important, because the goal here, as he talks about it, is identifying when you are below the line. When you identify when you're below the line, and if your goal is to be the conscious leader of your life and in your organization, then you realize that the benefits of being conscious, because you've seen the contrasting stories, right? You've already identified your why in those three areas. So it's clear that being above the line allows you to make progress in those areas, those three areas in your life, right? The planetary, the business part, and your personal. And so I love when he talks about on the second page, on page 14, he says, we then ask all participants where they are with respect to the line, right? And so part of it is like, it's not a question of where you are, like it's definitive. It's a constant motion. And once you realize, you're more aware, because you're practicing being conscious about the words that we're using, the thoughts that we're having, you have the opportunity to shift. And that shift can happen in a moment, right? You start to have those thoughts and you go, okay, these thoughts, they're not going to help me to accomplish the why that I have, right, in those three areas. So I need to shift. And so he goes over some pretty important tools, but I like the language that he used. Open, curious, committed to learning. Sound familiar? Right? And we've learned all of this in the Life book. And then below the line is closed, defensive, committed to being right. And so I love how he talks about being conscious. Says some swim in these waters consciously and others unconsciously. So again, this is just about paying attention to you and where your thought life is, how you are speaking, and what words you're using. Because he says, we suggest that the first mark of conscious leaders is self-awareness and the ability to tell themselves the truth. Wow. Like that was, when I read that, I was like, okay, that's it right there. That's the secret sauce of this whole book. Are you willing to tell yourself the truth? If you're willing to tell yourself the truth, right? That first attack on your ego is coming from you, right? So then when the people that you love are saying things to you about things that you know you are, then it's less dangerous for your ego. And so it's the distortion and the denial are those cornerstone traits of unconscious leaders. If you're living below the line, you know this, because everything seems like an attack. Everything seems like you're having to protect why you feel the way you feel, as opposed to just how people may be experiencing you, right? And so you're open to that self-awareness because you're practicing it regularly, and you're able to identify it yourself, and you're able to tell yourself the truth. So I don't know about you, but I think that was probably one of the, it is one of the toughest things that I'm going to be working on, is telling myself the truth, because I see what's at stake. And it's in those three areas that in my mind. And I love how he talks about it in a way that Dr. A phrases, it's not your fault, right? Part of it is that hardwired neural pathways in our brain that we've used to defend our ego in the sense of like, it's our life that's at stake, right? And so we go into battle of like, okay, when somebody has something that I'm hurt by, I have to defend it with everything, right? And so that just doesn't serve us, right? It doesn't help us to be more, to become more, because we're constantly fighting against those things. So any last closing thoughts? And then we'll talk about where we're going to go from here. And I kind of want to get a gauge of where everybody's at with their 5 minutes a day. Any closing thoughts before we kind of close up our meeting time today? All right. Well, I thank you guys for being here. I'm going to be posting in the group our next meeting time. I mentioned you guys before. It's gonna change different times, different days. And I am recording this call. So if you're not able to attend the next call, that's okay. Remember, this is really about you being on this journey, practicing these skills. And I encourage you to share in our page, share some of the things that you're learning and reading this week. I think it's going to edify the journey that we're on together. And so I'm really excited for you guys to be a part of this. If you have thoughts or questions, please throw them in the chat. Let's help each other to grow. And so 5 minutes a day, I'm finished with the first part, and I'm totally okay. If you guys want to take this next call and really kind of wrap up a little bit of above and below the line, but then start to get into the 4 ways of leading in the world. And so he talks about as me, to me, through me, and by me. So I think where we are kind of in the middle of above and the below the line. And then next week, we'll get into the 4 ways of leading, because it's just so meaty. I don't want to just rush through this. I really love to experience it with you. And I truly need some more time to kind of digest what I've learned and kind of chew on it a little bit. So I hope you guys are all with me. Thank you guys. And I'm excited to see you guys next week. All right. Take care, everybody.